It's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another video, and today I'm going to talk about Netmaker. Now, if you've been looking for a really great way to set up a Wireguard network, a way that gives you an option to have people sign in and have permissions to certain networks or certain devices, if you've been looking for a way to set it up with a graphical user interface that really gives you a ton of power over how you set up your network, then Netmaker is going to be the solution for you. This is a really cool project, and I had a really great opportunity to sit down with Alex, the creator of Netmaker, a couple of times over the last week. And we just talked about all kinds of things, but just when it came to Netmaker, there was such a passion about making networking easy that it was easy to tell that that was something he was really after and what he was really interested in. He took some time. He explained to me how to use Netmaker to set up a few different scenarios that I think will be excellent, whether you're doing this for your business or if you're doing this for home use, for personal use, whatever. I really think you're going to enjoy this video. I'm going to show you how to install Netmaker, how to get it up and running, and how to set up a couple of different scenarios that we can use that will be really useful. And there's just so much more you can do with it. I couldn't possibly cover all of the options, but once you see how to do a couple of things, I think your imagination can take you a really long way. Stick with me, and we're going to get to the install right after this. I want to say thank you to all of my subscribers and all of my patrons over at Patreon. Seriously, you guys make this so worth it for me to do these videos every week. I really, truly enjoy it, and I just can't say thank you enough. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe. Let YouTube know that I'm doing a good job by subscribing to the channel. Plus, you'll get notified when I have new videos coming out. And finally, if you're enjoying what I'm doing, give it a like. Just click on that thumbs up, and that way YouTube knows that you like it, and they'll pass it along to other people that might enjoy my content as well. I really appreciate it. Thank you again. Let's get started. So I've already installed the server. We're going to start off first just showing you how you can do some different things with Netmaker, and then I'll go through the installation processes later and talk about some of the things you can do there. But I want to let Alex kind of take it away and show us what he's got today. And he's just going to be using a server that I set up just before we started this. So Alex, go ahead and introduce yourself too, please.
Hey, I'm Alex. I am founder of Netmaker. And yeah, we create WireGuard virtual networks and try to make it easy for you. So happy to be here. Yeah, so I guess to get started, we were last talking about, you kind of shared your login with me, but we can also just create an admin user for myself. So I'm going to do that so that we don't have to share passwords or anything. So think of myself, log in. And if you had any networks, we could make me just the admin of an individual network, but going to be a super admin here, just give myself lots of privileges. And yeah, I should be able to log out, log back in as myself.
Nothing's ever gone wrong giving somebody full access to your servers, right?
Yeah, you definitely want to be careful with, hey, I don't really want to expose this dashboard to the public, which is totally understandable. So if that is an issue, we have in the docs here, way down at the bottom, it tells you how to set up your security settings so that only particular IP addresses can reach your dashboard. The first thing you want to do is create a network, obviously. So yeah, you can go ahead and go to your network page and then click to create a network. And I guess, Brian, what do you want to call this network?
Let's just call this remote access 1. That's fine. Okay. Yeah, just keep it simple.
Might be above our character count. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Dang, we are 1 character too high. So,
well, let's just call it remote 1. How about that?
Remote 1. Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason there is actually a naming scheme we do when we set up interfaces. We set up the network interfaces on machines using the network name. And we add a little dependent thing to it as well. So if the network name is too long, we actually can't use it as an interface name.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, so we could also autofill this just to get some, random values in there. I guess IP address.
Yeah, that IP address looks fine.
Okay, cool. So that's, pretty much it then. The main things are name, address range. You can turn IPv6 on if you want. probably don't need it for this use case. And then the one other one you want to think about is UDP hole punching, if you want to have that on or off. And then you just go ahead and create that. And what's doing in the background is creating the network and adding the server to the network. Then the next step would be to add machines into our network. And you can do that a couple ways. So if we go to our access keys page, this is typically how we do it. So you create an access key and you give it a number of uses. You can always invalidate an access key. So once you create it, it gives you a token, it gives you some install instructions. And you can also join a network just using your username password if you want. So that's the other way to do it and not use an access key at all. But yeah, so I guess now that we have that, what you'd want to do is go to your machines and run the install for the client.
All right, we're going to follow their quick install guide. Now, the best way to run this is absolutely to set up a VPS, and something like DigitalOcean, Linode, Vultr, AWS, they suggest any of these. They do give a warning down here about Oracle free tier. Just be aware that they've seen that using that one you can have some issues with interference in the network, things like that. So be aware. It's not that you can't use it, it's just that they've seen some issues, so they do give you a little warning about that. That said, there's a little bit of DNS setup that we want to do. So again, if you're going to do this for business or if you're going to do this for home, if you want to have your own domain, it's very inexpensive to get a domain. You don't have to get a super expensive domain. You don't have to get a .io that's going to cost you $50, $60. You don't have to get a .org. You can get anything that you can point to the server that you're going to set up. So we're going to do a little bit of pre-setup. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up DigitalOcean and create a droplet, and we'll kind of go through that together. It's really easy. If you've never tried it before, I do have a affiliate link in the description for DigitalOcean. It'll give you a $200 credit for 60 days to try out DigitalOcean, which means you could set up a lot of servers. And for like the little one we're going to set up today is like $6 or $7 a month. That's a lot of servers like that you could test out things on. If you do that and you stick with them, I get a credit. If you don't, it's no big deal. Just to be very clear about what happens if you do that's what it is. So if you want to go with Linode, AWS, anybody else, it's fine. I'm just letting you know that I do have an affiliate link. If you want to try them out for free, you can do that. All right, here on DigitalOcean, if you want to create a droplet, it's really not that hard. And you see I've got one here set up that I've been playing with. But you go over here to create and you pick droplets. That's what they call their virtual private servers. I'm just going to do a Ubuntu 2004 or 2204 server. That works perfectly fine for what we're going to do. I'm going to just dot this little checkbox and pick this $6 a month droplet here. It's plenty. It's a 1 gigabyte RAM, and then it's got one virtual CPU. Now, on their site, they suggest at least 2 gigs of RAM, so you could jump up to this $12 one if you want to, but I think the $6 one so far has worked fine for me. Now, it depends on how many connections you're going to have. If you're going to set this up for a lot of people, start thinking about just bumping up a little bit, because at some point you have to handle that traffic, you have to have the transfer, that kind of stuff, so be aware of that. But for now, we're going to set up this $6 one right here. We're going to go down, pick a place that is geographically close to you, physically close to you. It just cuts down on latency. So for me, New York, San Francisco doesn't really matter. Right in the middle of the country, so that's easy. And then we're going to go down. I do want to set up my SSH keys, so I'm going to set up the two that I know I have on the machines where I can access this droplet from. And this is just my public key. It's not going to hurt anything for you to see that. Don't worry about that. And then as we move down, I'm just going to call this thing, and I'm going to call it Netmaker the IT Pros, something like that, something for me to identify it in the list. And then we're going to click on create. So that's going to go out and it's going to create my base Ubuntu droplet. It's not going to be anything massive or major, but what I need to get out of it is an IP address that's a public IP address, which is great. That's the nice thing about DigitalOcean, Linode, any of those. They give you a server with a public IP address that doesn't change, so that's really nice. While we're waiting on that, I'm going to go over to my GitLab. And I'm going to get ready to install Docker CE and Docker Compose. Now you can follow their instructions directly, and their instructions just tell you you're going to use Docker IO and Docker Compose instead. It's up to you, but I like Docker CE, so I'm going to use that one. So we'll get down to that part here in a minute, but we're going to set up our DNS and do some of this prep stuff first. So I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to go into my Docker installs library, and again, I'll have a link for you guys. I'll have instructions on exactly how to do this in the show notes, so it makes it a lot quicker for you. You don't have to kind of do the method that I'm doing right now. And then we're going to go back over here to DigitalOcean. I've got a public IP address now, so that's good. I'm going to copy that public IP address, And then if you followed along on setting up the email server, you know that we set up a custom DNS server as well. So I'm going to go here to my box.theitpros.org/admin, and I'm going to go to custom DNS. And I want to add a custom DNS record. To keep this easy, we can create an A record that has *netmaker.theitpros.org, which means anything .netmaker.theitpros.org will point to this server that we're about to set up. So that's really important whenever we're doing this. Now I want to make sure I go to custom DNS, not external DNS. So we're just going to type in the name that we want, which is *.netmaker, and you can see I've done this before, and then it puts .theitpros.org right here. It's going to be an A record, so I'm just going to leave this where it is. And then I'm going to paste in that IP address that I just got from DigitalOcean, and I'm going to save that record. And this should come up and tell you it was successfully updated, which is great. And that's going to take a few minutes to propagate, so no big deal, no hurry. What we're going to do is make sure we've still got this IP address copied, and we're going to open up a terminal, console, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to SSH over to that server. So just SSH root at the server IP address. I'm going to type in yes, and then it'll check my keys, and I'm in. So first thing we want to do is update and upgrade the server to make sure everything is up to date. So we're going to do, and you don't have to do sudo if you're root, but you can. It's a habit for me. Apt, let's see, sudo apt update ampersand sudo apt upgrade -y. And it's going to go out and try to actually find all of the updates for this server, run those things, and get the server itself up to date. Now, while it's doing that, we can actually open up another terminal, do SSH root at, and just paste in that same IP address. I'm going to make this bigger for you guys. And then we can do nano install-docker.sh. We're going to go back to our browser. We're going to grab this text one more time. We're going to go back to our terminal, and we're going to paste it in. And then we'll save with Control-O, exit with Control-X. So we've got our install-docker.sh. We can change that to have executable permissions with chmod +x install-docker.sh. Now again, I'll have instructions on how to do all this stuff in the show notes. You can just copy paste commands and get this set up the same way. It'll have a slightly different method for doing it, but really and truly almost the exact same method. Now that we've got that part done, I can close out of this terminal here. And we should have the other terminal still running there in the background. All right, that finished. So we're just going to do a reboot. And we'll give that about 20-25 seconds, and we'll log back into that server. All right, we've given that a few seconds. Let's see if we can log back into the server. And we're in. Great. So if we do an ls, we can see that installed docker.sh file here that we made executable a while ago. So we're just going to run that with // and then the name of that file. It's going to tell us a little bit about our system. So we have 2204, so we're going to pick option number 4 down here. And then we do want Docker CE, so we'll put a Y. Docker Compose, we'll put a Y. And the rest of these we're going to put an N. So this is just going to go out, and at first it's going to try to update and upgrade the system. Now, if you're running this on DigitalOcean, I recommend doing exactly what I did, which is run the update and upgrade first, and then run this script, because when you run it on a VPS, sometimes it pops up with a message in the terminal asking you to do something because it has a different setup that DigitalOcean set specifically for your VPS, and this script does not present that to you. It just doesn't. So it'll seem like it's hung on this first step for a long time. Now, it could take a while to upgrade the server depending on how long it's been since you ran that. But as long as it doesn't pop up anything in the background, just runs the upgrade, it'll finish and continue on. But if it does, then this will seem like it's hung and you won't see that. So that's why I did it that way. And there it is. And the next thing it'll do is try to install Docker Compose. It's going to set up the user. If you're logged in as a regular user, this will set up the actual user as part of the Docker group, which helps run Docker command without sudo. But in this case, the expectation is that you're going to be logged in as root in order for Netmaker to do some of the things it has to do first, setting up your network and things like that. All right, everything's installed. That's great. So we're just going to do Docker PS just to make sure it comes up with something like this. If you see this, then Docker's working, you're set up. So we can clear this out, and we're going to go back to their instructions. So we already prepared our DNS. Now there's 3 different domain things that they want set. They want dashboard.netmaker.yourdomain, and then api.netmaker.yourdomain, and then broker.netmaker.yourdomain. That's why I did the star, because it should help us get these things set up automatically in the background, which is great. So the next thing we need to do is install our dependencies. So they give us a couple of commands that we need to run. So first sshn as root, and then run the update, which we already did. And then it wants us to install Docker.io, Docker Compose, which we've already done, but we also need to install Wireguard. So we'll go back and actually run that. So sudo apt install wireguard-y. And that's done. And then the next thing is a little bit of firewall setup. Now, by default in DigitalOcean, the VPS firewall is turned off. You can go and turn on a separate firewall appliance in front of the VPS, which is kind of nice. But if you do, you need to make sure you've got ports open, and this gives you the port ranges you need to have. So you can go ahead and run this. You just copy this, and it's using the uncomplicated firewall UFW. So if you're using a different operating system, you'd have to adjust for this for sure. So I'm just going to go back over here, paste that in and run it real quick. Doesn't take long. Then we're going to come back and do one more here for IP tables and switch back, run that one real quick. And I'm just copying and pasting literally right out of their documentation here. Now the next thing is to install Netmaker. So there's a few things to do here. So we're going to prepare Docker Compose. So we're going to run this command right here first, and we're just going to go over here and run it. There we go, and it grabs the IP address of our server. So we're going to run this wget to go grab their Docker Compose file, and it will pull that down for us, and then we'll add a few things to that file using these sed commands, and then we'll be just about ready to run. So we're just going to copy that one, paste it in. There it is. Now if we do an ls, we should see that we have my Docker installer script, the log from that, and then docker compose.yaml. Great. And then we will switch back, and we're going to go here, and we're just going to run this sed command. We've got to replace what's inside these angle brackets with what it's asking for. But other than that, we should be set. So I'm just going to hit a tab here and go back. And I'm just going to go back here to this slash, and I'm going to erase everything to there. And this is netmaker.theitpros.org. I'm just going to hit enter. And then we've got to go back and grab this next one, and it wants the IP address of our server. So again, we'll just go back here to this slash right before the G, get rid of everything in the angle brackets, and we'll put in our IP address, which we will go and just get from DigitalOcean. If you remember it, it's fine just to type it in as well. And then we'll paste that in there and hit enter. And then we need one more command here. And this just wants our email address, and you can use any email address you want to here. So I'm just going to go this way, hit enter. Then we're going to move down, and it wants us to generate a unique key. So we're just going to highlight this top command here first, and we're going to run that, and it gives us that key. And then we're going to use this sed command right here, and we're just going to back up. Again, take out everything in the angle brackets. We're going to highlight this key, and we can right click and copy it, and then one more back, I think. There we go. We can right click and paste it, and there's the key. There we go. Get rid of that return line if it happens to add one for you. Now we've got it. There's our sed command. Put everything in the right place here. One more thing where we go grab this file, this special file. So it's going to pull that down. It's going to pull down basically an MQ, which is just a messaging queue configuration file that we need. It's already preset, nothing to change in it. It pulls that down. I'm going to clear this out so we can keep going here. And I think we're ready. We're really ready to run Docker Compose up-d. Now you can run it with sudo if you want to, but in this case we're logged in as root, so we don't need to. And I'm just going to hit enter. That's going to pull down all of the images that we need, including the Netmaker stuff. And it's pretty fast. These are not huge files. They unzip really quickly, especially on these DigitalOcean droplets with these SSDs. And then it comes up, and it'll tell us if everything comes up and running. They should get it done, basically. And then in the documentation, once you've done that, it basically just says go to dashboard.your-base-domain, and you should be able to get to the Netmaker dashboard. So we can jump over here. We don't need this code anymore, so we can go to dashboard.netmaker.theitpros.org. And there we go. Now, we need to create an account. Again, you can use any email you want to for this account. It doesn't have to be the email you put in. Then give it a nice strong password and repeat it and hit create. If everything goes well, it'll come up to this screen where you're going to then use that information to log in. And you can tell it to save or not save. It's really up to you, kind of what you do there. Once you're into the dashboard, really Netmaker is running. So you've now got a WireGuard system running in the cloud, and we can do a lot of stuff with this. But the first thing we actually need to do is create a network. So you come up, you really have nothing here. This is kind of your dashboard where you can get an overview of what's going on. So you can see how many access keys there are, how many external clients, and we'll explain the difference between external clients and net clients, or their net client agent basically. So nodes, everything like that. So you can get a nice quick overview of your network. But we're going to click in, and we don't really have any networks yet, so we're going to create a network, and we're going to give this a network name. We're just going to call it the IT Pros. And then address range IPv4. Now they have this autofill. You can just click this and it'll kind of do whatever it wants, but you can see it replaced my name here. You want to be a little careful with how long you make this. So we're going to do the IT Pros. Pretty short. I think it's 12 or 13 characters. And it's because of how they set up your network interface naming. There's some stuff that they append to it and things like that that they know to look for. So be careful with this. There it is. 12 lowercase characters. So don't try to make it mixed case or anything like that. It gives us an IP address that's already in the private IP address range space. It's up to you if you like this or if you want to change it. For me, it's fine. Next thing is if you want IPv6, you can turn that on right here. I'm not going to use IPv6, but feel free. UDP hole punching is another one, so they have it on by default. I don't know if it needs to be on. I'm going to turn it off. If we need to come back and turn it on, we can always do that. Default access control, just a few little different options for your network, but for the most part, we're set. We're going to create the network, and you'll see it pops up right here. Now we've got this network. That's great. We've created a network, but what can we do with it? So this is kind of where their NetClient install comes in. Now, if you're running on a Linux system like I am, you can try to use the NetClient. If you have a server that you're going to put on this network, you can use the NetClient. So there's a lot of different things you can do with the actual NetClient itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go and install the NetClient on one of my servers here inside of my network. That's the first step. What I want to do is I want to create a connection from outside on the internet from my DigitalOcean VPS server to the inside of my network. So I want to be able to go from outside my network to inside my network and actually access something. So the first thing we're going to do is just a peer-to-peer connection from outside of my network to inside my network. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to create some access keys. So first thing we need are access keys, and it asks you which network, because you can make multiple networks. So you're going to pick the network you want to create access keys for, and then you can create multiple access keys. I don't know why it brings you to this page and then doesn't have the network you picked, but pick it again and then do create access keys. And right here, you're going to give it a name. So this is my network. You could call this Bob's network, Joe's network, Bill's machines. Depending on how you're setting this up, you could set this up where you have multiple developers who need to access certain machines, but only that developer needs access to it. So you create his network and only his machines are on his network, and you have to worry about other people trying to access his machines. You could have an entire office network where it's like north office, south office. Just really kind of up to you. So as you're going through this, think about how that works. But you can create these keys. You can create more than one. It doesn't have to be one key per machine or anything. So I'm going to create, let's just call this 5 keys. So I've created the keys, and then they give you these instructions on how to set this up. Now you need to have the NetClient installed. So if you're going to install the NetClient, you need to go and find the NetClient instructions. Again, I'll have these links in the show notes in the description. And then we're going to basically use this join command for the NetClient right here. Now they have NetClients for Linux, for Windows, for Mac OS, and they have graphical user interfaces for Windows. They have them for Linux, but it does not get installed by default with the actual client whenever you're installing. So be aware of that. But they have instructions for Debian distros, Red Hat distros, Arch. So you kind of have a good option set here for these. But again, if you don't have a NetClient option for some reason, or it's not working for you, you can try to use it as an external client, quote unquote, which is just basically getting the WireGuard config and running it straight up from WireGuard. So what we're going to do, I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna go and open up my terminal here again. All right, I'm logged into my server, so I'm just gonna grab this and I'm gonna kind of slide it over to one side of the screen here. And I'm gonna grab these commands and then we're gonna basically fill them in as we go. So first thing we gotta do is grab their key. And then I'm gonna switch back over to my terminal. Paste that in. It's gonna ask for my password. And it's gonna grab the key. I could probably do this all in just one big block. We add the repository, we update, and then we install the Netclient. And really that's all there is to it. The Netclient's installed. If you have Windows, you basically run an executable to get it installed on Windows. It's really not that difficult to do. Now we are on our Netmaker box. We've got our instructions right here for joining with the Netclient. So I'm just going to copy this line right here. So I just click on this button to copy that line of instructions. Once we've got that pasted in, we're just going to hit enter. So we have to run this with sudo, I forgot. So we do need to do sudo and then paste in the command. And now we can hit enter. And we should get output like this. It should be very straightforward, very minimal output. Kind of make this easier to look at. But basically joining, it tells you the network information and then basically starting Wireguard. So now if we do wg show, again, sudo wg show, sorry. We can see here that we've got basically our system we just logged in and the server as a peer, and we're basically set up. So this is pretty great, right? So I've already got this thing going. We can see that we're getting some data. So we've got 92 bytes already received. So everything's talking. I should be able to ping that server as well. So this is the server address right here. So I should be able to do ping and then that server address and get responses back. And we do. Now I should also have internet access. So I should be able to do ping google.com and I get responses. That's great. So everything's working. We're online. And our server is up and running. So the first thing we have to do is we have to go back to our network. And we're actually going to go here to our nodes section. You can see there's two nodes. So we've got the actual access point, the main server, and then we've got the one that I just added, which is this client. What I need to do is I need to make an ingress node. So egress means I'm coming from the network and I'm going out to something else. We'll use that in a minute to access my home network. But ingress means I'm coming from quote unquote outside the network and I'm joining it and coming in, which I'm going to be using it as an external client. So this needs to be an ingress node. So I'm going to click on this button. It's going to ask, are you sure you want to create this as an ingress gateway? I'm going to say yes, accept, and you'll see that turns into a little check mark. Next, I'm going to go over here to the left menu. I'm going to go down here to external clients. I'm going to click on my server, and you can see it's already kind of set up since I've got the ingress gateway created. So I'm going to click on this little plus right here. I'm going to say I need to create an external client, and you see it gives me a QR code option. It gives me the ability to download the file, kind of however I want to do it. So you can do this in a lot of ways for Wireguard. Now, back on the Netmaker interface, we're going to go back into our nodes, and on this one that is my network, what I want to do is I want to turn that into an egress node. So my iPad comes in through this network, travels over to this one, and then it says, I want to allow it to go out to the rest of the network that this server's physically connected to. So from the VPN to the LAN. So I need to know a couple of things before I do this. So I'm going to switch back to the terminal. And I need to do IP-BR-CA. And what I'm looking for is the interface name for my interface that my private IP LAN runs on. So this is my LAN 192.168.10, and this is the interface ENS 18. So I'm going to click on this button right here. So the first thing it asks for the egress gateway is, what do we want for the gateway range? So I want this to be 192.168.10.0 / you're going to use CIDR notation 24. So that's all of this basically subnet up to 10. And then the actual interface that it uses is ENS18. Enable NAT, and I'm going to say create. That turns into a check mark. I'll zoom this back out a little bit, and now we've got our egress gateway. Now I had a little problem because I showed you how to set this up, and I did it from the itpros.org, and I set everything up on my home network, but I realized I don't really have a way to get off of my home network and back in. I was going to try to use my cell phone as a hotspot, and it just wasn't working. My cellular coverage in this house is miserable, so I have to use Wi-Fi calling all the time as it is. So that just didn't function. So what I'm going to do is I've got this actually set up for a client, and I've got a network already set up. And I have set up their nodes in a way that you'll notice is very familiar. So I have this Ingress gateway, which is their server, which is the server that I've set up. And then I've got an Egress gateway set up on their system. And all I did was just set up a little VM with Lubuntu on it, very basic minimal operating system. And then I went in and installed the Netclient on that VM, and I turned it into an Egress node. So Ingress and Egress is exactly what it sounds like. So I have this machine set up with the Wireguard client. And this is just a GUI client that you can get on the internet out there on GitHub. It's pretty great. I may cover it in a separate episode sometime. But you can see here I've got two different ones. So this is the one we just created today, and I can connect to it. It just, because I'm inside the network already, I can already connect all the machines inside my network. So it doesn't really show you the capability that it has. But if I hit connect, you see it connects, and I get my message down here that it connects. And then I can hit disconnect, and it disconnects. But this is the one that I'm going to use because I'm going to show you that when I connect, I can then access things on this network, on this other network. So my network IP addresses are 192.168.10, and the addresses on this network are 192.168.16. So I'm going to try to go to https://192.168.16.14, and I'm going to do 8006. Now this would be the Proxmox server on this network. Now it's going to try. It's going to go. It's going to be like, well, I'll look for it. But obviously, because I'm not connected to that network in any way, it's not going to find it. It's just simply not going to happen. So it can sit here. We can sit here for a little while it thinks, and it's going to finally say, I can't find that. I can't reach that. It just isn't going to happen. But what I can do is I can go here and I can now connect to this network. And once I've connected to that network, having that Ingress gateway in place, I can refresh that, and now I connect right up to Proxmox, and I can get onto the system. And I'm still hitting the same IP address. I have not changed anything. All I did was come up here and basically refresh the attempt to get into the system, and now I can reach that system. So anything on this network I can now reach, because this is not the machine that actually has the quote-unquote Egress gateway. It's a virtual machine on the Proxmox server that has its own IP address inside of the network. So this is the power of using something like Wireguard and having some amazing software that someone has taken the time to set up, like Netmaker. So being able to set this up and saying, you know what, first I need a way to get into the network from outside. So I've got my machine that's set up basically like an external client. I go in through the Ingress gateway, and then it routes me across the network to this peer that is then an Egress gateway. And when we set this up, all we did was say, here's the IP address range that I want. And in this case, it was 192.168.16.0/24 for the CIDR notation. And then I told it what port this runs on. And again, you can run a quick command. I showed you how to do that to figure out what your port is. And once you do that and get this little check mark, you're ready to go. You should be set up and ready. Now, even if I was using the Netclient on my machine, I would still be able to reach the things that are on this Egress network. I need the Ingress network because I'm actually setting up my machine as an external client to this network. If I wanted to set up the Netclient on my machine and actually run it that way, I could. It still would function. I wouldn't even need the Ingress gateway because then my client is considered one of these nodes and I just need the Egress gateway. So a couple of other things that are worth mentioning is that they have some user control. I talked about that when we first set this up. I kind of wanted to show you what that looks like. So if we go over here to the left bar and click on users, you can see right now I'm the only user in here. But I can add a new user. I can give them a username. So I could just say Bob at bobsbrowsers.com. I could give Bob a password that's temporary and then confirm that password. And then I can say whether or not Bob is an admin on the system. And I can check which networks he has access to. So if I create more than one network, because remember, you're not limited on this, you can create different networks. But I could create 5 or 6 networks and set up different machines on those various networks so that they don't have access to each other. It's almost like creating VLANs, but using Netmaker instead. But here, I could say, you know what, Bob has access to this one and not the other 3. Kind of any way that I want to do that. And then I hit create, and Bob has a user. Now Bob can come log in with his user, and he can only do certain things to certain networks that I give him access to, or he might be an admin that I also need to help me monitor the system, so he can come in and do admin things. It just depends on how you want to set this up. So pretty cool that you have this kind of user access capability where you can have other people getting into the system and helping you out. Pretty useful when you have a business that's growing, especially. Now they also have ACLs. You can click over here on the left and you'll see that you can get ACLs. You can pick your network again, and you can kind of go in and set up what do the access control lists look like, how does this work. So a few nice features again kind of built into the Netmaker system. And again, this is open source software that you can get out there and run for yourself. So they have basically some graphs. So this kind of gives you a really cool look at your network, and you can see exactly what's happening. So these colors tell you what each thing is. And you can pick the network. If you have more than one, you can pick so you can see the different networks here, but it'll kind of show you what's being built out as your network grows. So you've got this thing that shows you like, hey, this can go into here and this one can go into here. So these are my external clients that they can go into the Ingress gateway. And then the Ingress gateway and Egress gateway are peers, so they can go in both directions. You can see the arrow indicating that. And then the Egress gateway says you can go into that. But these machines cannot reach back out to my machines that are connected. So it's kind of a one direction thing from this point on. And the same way here, these can reach in, but this can't reach out. So you're really setting up a nice set of network capabilities here. Now I've shown you how to do this because I think this is useful. When I have to get onto client networks and client systems, having this ability to do this over a VPN, over a secured connection, and over a fast connection like Wireguard is absolutely fantastic. It is just amazing that there's an open source project like Wireguard that exists, that there's an open source project like Netmaker that exists. Now Netmaker's coming out, like I said, with a pro level setup. I think it's going to be really great. And again, as you get more and more into using things like Netmaker, check that out. Help support the Netmaker project, because this is an amazing tool. Look at this thing. Look at everything you get out of this. And it's all open source. So these guys put a lot of time and a lot of effort into making this great. And for us to support them is so very important. All right, before I finish up this video, I wanted to make sure and focus on the fact that Netmaker is creating a Pro plan. And if you want to see the information about that, you can just click over here on this Pro at the top of their screen. Here's the things you get with it. So Netmaker is open source. You can run this for free. You can do everything that I've shown you. You get all of the tools that I've shown you. But in order to keep going with this open source project, just like any open source project, they need a way to start monetizing this and start getting some money back for the time that they've put into it. And again, Alex was so great to get on and just walk me through everything that I showed you. And it was really great to be able to talk with him. But I wanted to make sure that you saw everything as well. So here on the Enterprise Edition, one thing that you'll get is basically metrics and monitoring. So they have this dashboard that you can actually get to that has a lot of metrics and monitoring about what's going on in your network, your users, your devices, everything like that. So a couple of the other really great features is user management and access. So I showed you that you have some user management as it is out of the box, which is great. So also worth looking into the user management if you're looking for more user management capabilities out of the box with Netmaker as well. And then of course advanced failover or automated failover. So basically some setup and some configuration that can help you, like if a node goes down, do some redirection, do some failover things. So again, keeping your network up and running where you can get 5 nines of uptime. If you're not familiar with that term, if you don't know what that means 99.999% of uptime. So if you break down a year into minutes and you look at 0.001% of that time, I think it's like 5 minutes, which means in a year, your system might be down for 5 minutes if you were to use this capability or this function. It's an extremely small amount of time when you really think about how long software has to be up and running consistently to reach 5 nines. Pricing, he tells you right here, like, we understand pricing is not easy. Not everything is worth the same amount of money. So they really price based on what you're using, and you can kind of check out what that's going to look like. You can see what's going on. The nice thing about it is, again, the pricing is based on your usage. It's not just like thrown up there with some kind of crazy pricing scheme. So I think that's really amazing. It's a great value, and I wanted to make sure to cover it, make sure that you guys knew about it. Please, if you're using Netmaker, if you like what he's doing, if you like what Alex has got going, get out there and support this project. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, like, subscribe, tell your friends about it so they can come along on the journey with us, and I'll talk to you next time.